So welcome everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever is applicable to you. Welcome to the webinar. Today we're going to talk about sustainability as a driver for new business models in manufacturing. My name is Arie van Berkel. I'm a Senior Vice President and Group Director here at Lux Research, and I'll be moderating today's session. Presenting today will be my colleague, Mike Holman, who is a Senior Vice President and Group Director here at Lux as well. Now, throughout this webinar, you can type any questions you have in the questions box on your screen. On my screen, that's on the right-hand side, it says Q&A box. Time permitting, we'll answer all of these questions as much as we can, right? Depending on time. If your question doesn't get answered, then please do not hesitate to email it to us. You can reach us at questions@luxresearchinc.com and we'll respond afterwards. All right, now without further ado, let's jump right into the presentation. Mike, can you show us how, rather than working on new technology, you can use new business models to actually become more sustainable?
Great. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ari, and thanks to everyone for joining the webinar today. Sustainability and driving new business models in manufacturing. So manufacturing and innovations in it has always been an important driver of growth and opportunity, right? Going all the way back to the early 20th century, when in fact the very discipline of scientific management, or what we would now call management consulting, was invented. Frederick Winslow Taylor applied to manufacturing the scientific management techniques to really be focused on labor productivity and optimize these manufacturing processes to increase output. And his ideas and sort of the descendants of those, from assembly line manufacturing to Kaizen and Six Sigma, that we may still use today, have been very important and very successful. And in fact, so successful now that we have some other challenges that manufacturing is confronting around sustainability, driven in large part by the increase of manufacturing output and some of the unintended consequences of that. But we see now that sustainability is now also a huge priority for manufacturing companies across different industry segments, whether it's in chemicals. Companies like Dow have targets around reduced carbon emissions and cutting plastic waste. Industrial companies like ThyssenKrupp have even tied executive compensation to sustainability. And many companies, Mitsubishi Corporation is just one example, have seen that sustainability is even an important guide to strategy going forward as well. So sustainability for manufacturing companies is very important, even as we look to continue to improve revenue and growth in other ways as well. But that creates some challenges, and that's what I want to talk about sort of here in the first section. Go into why sustainable innovation is a challenge for manufacturing companies in some ways, it may be more so than others. Talk about then a framework that we've put together to help address that, the Lux Sustainable Business Model Playbook. And finally, leave you with some closing thoughts about really how to enable business model innovation to address those challenges. So what does that mean by the sustainable innovation challenge for manufacturing? Well, the reason that I say there's a particular challenge for companies whose business model is product manufacturing is that your revenue and your profits come from how many products you sell, the amount of products that you sell, and the amount of resource usage from those products inevitably goes up. Maybe it's not a perfectly straight line as I've drawn it here. You might have some economies of scale. Perhaps it curves a little bit, but fundamentally, the more product you make and sell, the more resources you're going to be consuming. And as much as there are a lot of innovations, technology innovations that you can pursue around improving sustainability, using different alternative inputs, and even fundamentally changing manufacturing processes to help reduce the that resource use, you're still really just changing the slope of that line, right? Even when you improve efficiency, use less impactful inputs, go to less intensive processes, as long as the business model is selling those manufactured products, the marginal impact of each increase in revenue or profits is always going to be increasing revenue, increasing the resource usage, and thus the sustainability impact that your organization has. Are there ways where you can more fundamentally bend that curve and change change that relationship between revenues or profits and resource utilization? And in fact, I think there is, as indicated in the title, it's through business model innovation. And this is a bit of an older and maybe more well-known example, but I think it's a great illustration of the principle here, using the fertilizer company Yara. So their traditional business model is to sell fertilizer. Customers buy it by the kilogram or the ton. And for Yara to grow revenue and profits, it sells more fertilizer, which of course inevitably has a significant fertilizer, very resource intensive product to manufacture, and has also downstream sustainability impacts from its use as well. So that's a challenge from a sustainability standpoint. But what Yara can do, and in fact has done, is to change that with a new business model. Instead of selling fertilizer, they essentially sell fertilization. So customers pay them not by the ton, but by the hectare, by the amount of land that is being fertilized. And using precision agriculture, sensors, and other technologies, they can apply just the right amount of fertilizer to each section of the field. So now Yara is earning money from this service, and they can actually use less fertilizer if indeed it's appropriate to do so, which increases their profits, allows them to bring more hectares under management while using the same or even fewer resources if they can be smart enough about it. So it really does fundamentally break that incremental relationship between revenues or profits, especially in this case, and resource utilization. And so I think the idea that a new business model can help to increase sustainability isn't necessarily maybe all of that controversial an idea. I think a lot of organizations do appreciate that there's a role that these kind of business models can play in achieving these sustainability goals. But it's often hard to figure out exactly how to go about executing on that. And that's what we really wanted to tackle with this Lux Sustainable Business Model Playbook that we've developed. We went out and spoke to a number of our clients and other leading organizations in these industries about their experiences, successes, and failures with business model innovation, and what they needed to see and understand in order to drive that forward. And we found they really needed a playbook, which is to say they needed to understand both the field of play and the rules of the game, and what particular plays to run, the strategies and tactics that they needed to employ in order to be successful on that field. Specifically, what that means meant in business models, right, is that organizations needed to understand for business model innovation, what are the alternative business models that we could be considering, that we could be potentially making use of. And then that's our playing field. And then which ones should we use, and how should we go about executing on them, given our own organization's business and sustainability goals. Those are the choosing the right plays to run. So we set out to tackle both of these points: understanding the business model landscape and understanding how to operate within it. Taking that business model landscape first, we went out and found and explored a number of different business models that have been used with varying degrees of success. We found that can really put those into three categories to help organize and get your hands around this space. The first category of business models is adding services. So providing not just a physical product to your customers, but some sort of service around how they can best make use of that product, or otherwise change their operations to provide your organization with a revenue incremental gain in revenues that doesn't consume as much consumer resources in the way that producing more physical products does. And then again, many of these services can themselves be around helping customers to improve their own sustainability performance. A great example or a case study of that is from the chemical company Solvay. They produce a lot of chemicals that are used in mining operations for the separation and processing and extraction of metals from ores. And so by using sensors and developing analytics to continuously monitor and optimize the, in this case, the float operations at a copper or other mine, with their smart float system, they can provide a service to their customers that helps to optimize that extraction, that portion of the extraction process. That's a benefit to Solvay. They get this this additional service that they can provide, which also goes to increasing customer stickiness and other benefits. And it has a sustainability, a cost savings for the consumer, but also a sustainability benefit. The more efficiently you can extract the metals from the ore, the less ore you need to mine, which of course helps to mitigate the significant impacts that mining operations can have. So adding services is one option. Entirely changing the revenue model is another. So instead of changing what you get paid for, instead of being simply the product, to be paid for other types of outcomes or inputs, reducing that reliance on volume growth to drive revenue and profit increases. And one case study of a different revenue model here is an equipment provider, Trumpf, that in working with the insurance company Munich Re and its subsidiary, its IoT subsidiary Relayer, was able to transition from a model of selling equipment to a pay per part business model, where Trumpf will go and install the equipment on site at its customers for no upfront charge, but will instead charge the customer for every part that is produced on that piece of equipment. So now Trumpf can continue to grow by improving the throughput and efficiency of these machines, rather than needing to obsolete them and sell a whole new machine to get incremental revenue from that same customer. And it's an attractive business model for the customer as well. They can avoid that upfront capital cost, and they see their incentives both in efficiency overall and cost savings and sustainability, efficiency from a sustainability standpoint, aligned with their customers. Running this machine as efficiently as possible is now aligned to the financial goals of both firms. So changing revenue models is another approach. And then finally, transforming value chains. So companies can change their value chain positioning, get involved in, and even create entirely new stages of the value chain and ways to operate there that can provide, again, a way for a company to find growth opportunities without necessarily increasing that resource utilization, and even in some cases by decreasing it. Which one example of is the sneaker company On, which has created a business model around a circular sneaker subscription. So this is a new revenue model as well, because you don't pay to buy the shoe, you pay a subscription fee. On will send you a shoe, and indeed they will replace those shoes as often as necessary, as long as you're a subscriber to this this cycle-on program. And what that means then is you send them the used shoes back at the end of their useful life. That allows On to recycle them, because otherwise footwear is a product that's very difficult to recycle. I found this program intriguing enough that I went out and became a member of it. So I have a pair of these shoes right now, and when I'm done with them, they will go back and be recycled, which is was very likely not the case for any of the other shoes that I've owned. So this type of positioning On to own the end of life stage of the value chain, creates an additional opportunity for it, and also positions it much better to address the sustainability of its products as well. And so I've only shown here within each of these three categories, adding services, changing revenue models, and transforming value chains, just one example of a business model innovation. There are many other types of business models that we've captured and categorized here as a part of this playbook. I won't have an opportunity, of course, to go into discussing all of them today, but if there are questions that you have, or you want to discuss some other business model options, you can certainly reach out to us, and we'd be glad to explore that. So this takes care of that sort of first portion of it, understanding that landscape, that taxonomy, categorization as we've laid out here for those business model innovations. The question then of how to choose which ones to employ, and now comes to the fore. So how do you think about and evaluate these different business models and determine which one is the best fit for your organization, again, given both those business and sustainability goals? So first, you need to understand what are the business and sustainability goals, and you might customize this or make it more detailed or granular perhaps for your own organization. But many of the business impacts that we see are around cost savings, around reducing friction, transactional or operational friction between buyer and seller, cutting out manual steps, and so on. That's a great benefit to many of these business models. They may also generate value by improving resiliency or flexibility, helping companies to be more adaptable to supply chain or other disruptions that we've all lived through too many of over the last several years. So you can look at these business impacts and also look at sustainability impacts. And we group these into resource efficiency, following some of those ways to reduce manufacturing impact that we looked at earlier. Does this business model help to improve resource efficiency? Does it help to incentivize the adoption of alternative inputs? And does it incentivize or facilitate wholesale process change that can help to lower the impact? And indeed, within these categories, again, you might choose to get more granular. You might want to break alternative inputs up into materials inputs, and energy inputs, or even several categories thereof. But these are some of the major categories that we look at for assessing the impacts of business model innovation on both the business and the sustainability side. And then you can assess potential business models. So if you're looking at these decision support or the outcome-based pricing, or even other novel business models like selling carbon credits based on the emissions reduction that a certain technology or change might enable. You can monetize that through carbon credits, another type of business model. And so you could take all of these and rate the impact that we see them having on each of those business impacts and those sustainability impacts. Then you can even take a weighting to each of those, understanding for your organization is maybe improving resource efficiency is the most important on the sustainability side, and providing cost savings is the most important goal on the business side. So you can weight those impacts more heavily and give yourself an overall score for that business model innovation for your organization, right? And again, this is an example, in these categories and these ratings may be different from organization to organization. We work with our clients on a custom basis to help them apply this framework, these types of frameworks to their own operations. But hopefully this gives a good sense of how you can actually go about applying that type of this playbook with these potential business models and these impacts to help your organization decide how you can best make use of business model innovation to meet those business and sustainability goals. So finally, I wanted to offer a few concluding thoughts about making it all happen, because it's one thing, of course, to understand those business models, to decide on which ones you want to use. It's another thing to actually enable that, to make that happen in practice, and that of course is challenging when you're talking about something as novel as a new business model for your organization. So I think there's enablers that you need on the technology side. You may need to go out and identify different innovations or innovators to work with in order to make these business models happen. We saw an example of that already with Trump working with Relayer, this company in Munich Re, that helped to provide the analytics and digital capabilities behind that pay per part business model. But it doesn't just have to be a digital capability, though obviously for many of these business models it is. We see companies like Dow acquiring an advanced recycling company, or a stake in an advanced recycling company in Valorigen, to help them achieve that value chain positioning, getting access to plastic waste feedstock to supply recycled content to their customers. We've even seen other examples, like on the carbon credits front. Siemens has a service to help its customers quantify their own carbon footprint, and they actually went out and created a nonprofit called the Estanium Association, working with other corporates and startups and academics to provide a trusted source of data inputs for those carbon emissions and carbon footprint models. So partnering and to bring in the right capabilities, the technology enablers, is going to be important. And obviously this is something, that Lux is, that kind of enabling technology scouting, identifying the right innovators to work with is a big part of our bread and butter as well, something we work with many clients on. But another enabler is actually cultural change, and I bring this back to Taylor, where we started with, because it was something that he found as well, that getting the workers like these early 20th century steel workers you see pictured here to adopt his methods. It took some persuading, right? It was different from the way they were used to working, and he needed to change the culture, and he did that by talking to individual workers, helping to create the incentives around, how they could earn improved wages, for instance, by demonstrating their increased productivity. Found a few workers who were willing to buy in, and demonstrated that with them that they could indeed earn higher wages, which of course helped other workers to buy in and to see the benefit of it as well, and help to change the culture there. Just so with business model innovation, it's going to experience internal resistance and external resistance, frankly, from customers as well, if it's not the way that they're used to buying from you or working with you. So that's something that will have to be taken into account, and to find the examples and the success stories that you can create and point to foster that cultural change for business model innovation as well. So to sum up here, business model innovation is going to be critical for companies to meet sustainability goals. Many companies are already running into challenges around their net zero or their recycled content or other targets, and appreciating that things may need to change with their business in more fundamental ways in order to reach those often very ambitious targets. And I would say on the enablement front, right? You need to incorporate this type of business model thinking into your planning and technology road mapping as well. So understanding not just what innovations you're going to need to improve your products, but what innovations you're going to need to improve your business model. And finally, of course, that point about cultural change and business model innovation requiring new skills, that acceptance and buy-in from customers. Maybe it takes longer sales cycles, but if you have the support and and can show the benefit of it, you can cultivate those new mindsets, that new culture, and deliver on business model innovation to help meet those business and growth opportunity, and as well as sustainability goals. So with that, I'll thank everybody for the time and attention here so far, and happy to continue that discussion with some questions from the audience as well.
All right, thank you, Mike. And indeed, there's a bit of a discussion going on already in the Q&A box. As a matter of risk as well that I would like to raise here. So you mentioned a couple of types of business models, such as adding services, that are also pretty invasive into the operations of your customers or your partners in the value chain, right? If you're saying that Solvay is actually optimizing the mining operation, what did they mess up? Who's responsible? Who picks up the bill? How do you? It's a whole new category of risks. I think in this case, and Yara is much the same, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the reasons that type of that type of change is going to take some build up and some buy-in to achieve. I think that finding the right places to start is very important. It's a bit like the Geoffrey Moore crossing the chasm model, right? You need to find the right early adopters for these types of business models. And there was an innovation leader I spoke with about exactly this issue, who mentioned that the reason that they were able to get started with some of these types of services or operational support kind of business models with some customers is that they were able to begin with a few key customers who they had very well established, decades-long relationships with, and had already worked with them in maybe a less automated or digital way, but had worked with them many times over the years on how to how their products could help to improve the customers and optimize the customers' operations. And so they understood each other very well and had some of that baseline trusting relationship there to make for a good early adopter. And I think that if you're able to achieve that in a few key cases, then that becomes a great case study and a great proof point for helping to spread to other types of to other maybe more conservative customers as well.
Right. So building on that, basically what you're saying is you need some early adopters. You also need that driving force, and that's where we started, right? Sustainability as a driver. Yeah. How do you make it count? How do you know what sustainability impact you're actually accomplishing using these business models? Do we have to go through a full LCA, or is there another way to quantify and to make the driver visible?
Yeah, it's. That's a challenge. Anytime you're trying to improve your organization's sustainability, right? You have to understand what it is that you're optimizing and be aligned on what it is that you're optimizing for, and you have to be able to measure that and quantify it, and you have to be able to anticipate, are there other maybe unintended consequences of this? If we switch to this feedstock source that's maybe it's bio-based and it has a better carbon footprint, but then what does that mean for land and water use and or waste generation, some of these other factors as well. So I do think you need to have, I would say, that life cycle thinking type of orientation. You need to be aligned with your customers on what it is that you're that you're trying to improve on, and how it is that that should be measured, you do need to take that sort of life cycle view on it. There's another webinar. A full life cycle assessment might not always be practical. There's a previous webinar from my colleagues Smitha Udupa and Sriram Ramanathan on how you can use the sustainability fingerprint model to help to assess the sustainability impact with that sort of life cycle thinking without doing a full life cycle analysis. So ways that you can, and I think techniques like that can be very useful to help get that alignment between your company and your customers around what you're trying to quantify for and optimize for in sustainability.
Right. Yeah. Thanks. And of course, I know we're talking to some companies that are looking into digital ways of greatly simplifying performing an LCA analysis, and then of course, I'm sure we'll be talking about it when it's released. The European Union is about to release a guideline or a system on how to substantiate, how to prove improved sustainability claims on your products. So more on that later. For now, this is all we have time for in terms of questions. But again, if you have additional questions, maybe if you wake up tomorrow and think of a question, just send it to us, questions@luxresearchinc.com, and we'll try and answer as best we can. So thanks again, Mike, and thanks everyone for attending. After leaving the webinar, you'll be prompted to complete a survey. That's always really helpful for us to try and improve our future webinars, and we always want to improve them. And also take a look at our upcoming webinars, February 28 and March 21. We will have more webinars in store for you. So thanks all, and have a good day.
Thank you all.